Darren Dreger joins us, and I appreciate him because I got to ask you, Dregs, these days you can track it through clicks and so forth. Free agent frenzy in July or NHL trade deadline? Which generates more hype? Because it's insane at both ends of the calendar.
Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer, Rod, because I think there's a differing view on it. The hype is generated around the trade deadline for obvious reasons. This is the final tweaking or significant add that any of the clubs can make prior to going into the playoffs. And so any fan of a team that is playoff worthy, or even better than that, a Stanley Cup contending team, is hoping that their club adds that piece, something that's going to make them that much better. So, fan perspective, I think the hype and the intrigue is generated here. But I think the buzz machine is maybe louder as we approach the summer and July 1st. And part of that is because you've come out of the playoffs. The Stanley Cup has been awarded. You've gone through the draft where there's, again, been a dose of wheeling and dealing and all of that. And now you've got a wider audience to work with here as well. You've got general managers, you've got pro scouts, you've got the agents on July 1st that are heavily involved. So it's a little bit different, but certainly there's a high level of interest and electricity around both dates.
Yeah, for sure. And it keeps guys like you in business, obviously. So I got to ask you, and I can tell you're sick. I won't keep you long, Dregs. I appreciate you for pushing through this time of year and this very busy week. But can I you mentioned our Calgary sponsor, or you heard me mention our Calgary sponsors there. What are your thoughts on what's gone down there on the Jacob Markstrom situation? There's a lot of finger pointing going on, and it's just ugly. What's your take on it?
Yeah. Well, it's not going to get any prettier, Rod, unless Jacob Markstrom ends up getting traded between now and Friday. And there's still a possibility of that. We know that Tom Fitzgerald and the New Jersey Devils, who did something drastic to start the week by firing Lindy Ruff, still feel like they're in it. Now, they're a long way from the cut line, but post-trade deadline, you still have an ample amount of regular season action to maybe claw back. So I wouldn't be surprised if Fitzgerald, in fact, I know he's going to take at least one more run at Craig Conroy and Jacob Markstrom. I believe that Markstrom wants to go to the New Jersey Devils. So what I would wonder, if you're Conroy and the Flames, is it prudent to sit out and wait now, thinking that, all right, well, we might be in the playoff mix here as well. That was a big loss last night, by the way, to Seattle. Is it prudent to wait and see if the market gets better? Keep in mind, Jacob Markstrom has a no-move clause. If he wants to go to the New Jersey Devils now, and he wants to go to the New Jersey Devils in the summer and nowhere else, well, then guess what's going to dictate the terms of that trade? It's going to be Jacob Markstrom and his no-move clause. So, I think we can also all appreciate the predicament that ownership, management, and the Calgary Flames are in. No different than the New Jersey Devils. Try and envision a playoff team of the Calgary Flames that doesn't have Jacob Markstrom in goal. It's a tough thing to come to terms with. But one way or another, it's going to come to a head here in the next 72 hours.
Well, I'm be happy when it's all over, and then it's hammered down and we're officially in the home stretch. But, Jacob Markstrom started his career with the Florida Panthers. I hear his name around here a lot. They loved him in the brief time that he was here. I just want to ask you about the Panthers. They still aren't getting a lot of pub, even though they're the number one team in the NHL. Do you see them doing too much here this week?
No, but I pause there because, Billy Zito is a general manager who gets in things. He gets involved. We've seen that there's been an appetite to do something significant, but that was building to where the Florida Panthers are now, right? And you talk to Paul Maurice, you talk to Billy Zito, you talk to any team that plays against the Florida Panthers. It's more of a want to tweak, if anything. Not a need. The Florida Panthers don't have a need. If Florida's playing the Toronto Maple Leafs, Rod, as an example in round one, well, if I look at the goaltending in Florida versus Toronto, Florida's better. If I look at the defense, unless Brad Treliving does something, he acquired Ilya Lyubushkin. All right, well, Florida's defense is still better. Up front, even though Toronto's got that star power up front, I'm probably giving the edge to the Florida Panthers. So I think that you could see some tweaking. Maybe they add a depth forward, but I've also heard Zito's name in something bigger, right? There's been the Noah Hannafin speculation out there. How he'd find a way to make that work, I can't be sure, but I can guarantee you he's been involved in a lot of conversations. But it is a healthy place to be as a general manager when you look at how hard your team plays every single night and you don't feel the pressure to have to go out and add something significant.
Yeah, well, they've, as I've mentioned on our Panthers specific podcast, they have a string of healthy black aces as it is. You know, Josh Mahura can't get into the lineup, and he's great. Of course, he played for the Pats. Of course, he's great. But Dregs, when I first came down here and started doing this show, Joel Quenneville was the coach, by the way, of the Panthers.
Right.
So I've seen this team go from young, not knowing if they could win, to older, not old, older, and no expecting to win. And I'm wondering what the Leafs mentality is. Are they fragile or are they confident? They're in your backyard there, because that's what I think will tell the tale for that hockey team.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I don't have a hard answer on that. Leading up to the game that they played against the Boston Bruins last night, I would have leaned towards the Maple Leafs being a more confident group. Shot in the arm with the acquisition of Ilya Lyubushkin, so that doesn't necessarily firm up their back end, but it filled a need for a right shot defenseman. And then they don't start on time. They don't match the passion or the hunger of a Boston Bruins team that had just recently been scolded by its head coach in Jim Montgomery for playing inconsistently and not playing by the structure and the standard the Boston Bruins have worked hard to develop over the past couple of seasons. So, when they get into a role, they are as good as any of the top contending teams in the National Hockey League. And I don't include their goaltending in that. It's just they have too many breakdowns for us to really know where they're at. They're not at the level of Florida Panthers. I established that a minute ago. But that's not to say that they can't do some damage. And in a 7-game series, if they get on that roll like they've been prior to the Boston game, then, yeah, they've got a chance to gain that confidence that you have to make it to the Stanley Cup final.
Last one, Dregs. You know Kelly McCrimmon better than anybody else. Do you sit back and just smile at those moves? Like, here's an old name for you. Tim Tisdale, when he was coaching the Pats, said, if Kelly McCrimmon calls you for a trade, said it to our GM, hang up. You're not going to win. Yeah. And I watched Buffalo here last week with Tuck and Peyton Krebs. I'm like, they're great players, but they're not doing anything in Buffalo. Krim wins another one. They're obviously going to be there when this thing, in the end. They're always going to be there in the end, right?
He will throw punches until that bell sounds. That's it. That's just the way he's wired.
And after the bell.
The way, if he can get that shot in after the buzzer, he's going to take it. There's no question. That's how he was raised. And, God rest his soul. I think of the battles that he and Beast must have had growing up. And there was an individual who just would never quit. And that's the mentality of management of the Vegas Golden Knights. So, yeah, they've got some tough times now. We know that Mark Stone isn't coming back before the end of the regular season. He's questionable for the playoffs. And Stoner is the heart and soul. He really is on ice of the Vegas Golden Knights. Okay, well, there's no sense crying in your beer over this stuff. Try and fix it. So McCrimmon most definitely is going to add. To what degree, Rod? I'm looking at Jake Gensel, the Pittsburgh Penguins. Maybe Noah Hannafin of the Calgary Flames. Is it possible he lands both? Hard to imagine, hard to wrap your brain around that. But what I know is that McCrimmon is going to do everything to bolster this lineup, utilize the cap space he has to try and successfully defend that Stanley Cup championship. And that is the very reason why, when they have the cap space in free agency, almost all free agent players want to go to Vegas. It's not just because of the taxation. They get that in Florida. They get that in Dallas. They get that in Nashville. What you get in Vegas, every single year is an opportunity to win a Stanley Cup. And that's because of how aggressive ownership allows management to continue to be.
Yeah, the players have figured that out fast. They ain't stupid.
Yeah.
Dregs, thanks for coming on while on the injured list. I appreciate it, man. Enjoy the week.
Thanks for having me, Rod. I always appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. TSN's Darren Dreger, former voice of the Brandon Wheat Kings, the pride of Langenburg, Saskatchewan.